The first warning came not with a bang, but with a whisper of quantum disturbance that rippled through the delicate fabric of space-time. Jack Thompson leaned forward, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the holographic display in the underground command center beneath the Global Defense Headquarters in New Washington. The room hummed with the soft electricity of 1,000 monitoring systems, each one a sentinel watching the vast darkness between human-controlled star systems. Outside the reinforced windows, the early morning light of Earth barely touched the massive complex. Rows of quantum processors lined the walls, their crystalline structures pulsing with a soft blue light that seemed to breathe with each computational cycle. Thompson had seen countless threat assessments in his 25 years of service, but this was different. Something about the gravitational anomaly dancing across the holographic map sent a chill down his spine. Confirm the readings, he barked to Sarah Martin, his lead astrophysicist. Her fingers flew across the quantum interface, holographic data streams cascading around her like electronic waterfalls. Each movement was precise, calculated, the result of years of training and a lifetime dedicated to understanding the mathematics of cosmic threats. The anomaly refused to conform to any known pattern of stellar movement or known alien technological signatures. It was like a blind spot in the universe, a darkness that ate light and bent space around it. Thompson had seen enough to know that blind spots were never good. They were always the precursor to something monumentally dangerous. "Sir," Martin's voice cut through the ambient noise of the command center, "we're detecting multiple phase shift signatures consistent with large-scale spatial displacement. This isn't a natural phenomenon." Her fingers traced a complex pattern on the holographic display, expanding the anomaly's representation. What had appeared as a small disturbance now revealed itself as something far more sinister. The data told a story of calculated invasion. Massive ships, if they could be called ships, were positioning themselves at strategic points around human-controlled space. They moved with a precision that suggested more than simple navigation. This was a choreographed dance of destruction, each movement planned with mathematical perfection. Young technicians around the room began to notice. Whispers turned to concerned murmurs. Thompson recognized the look in their eyes, a mixture of fear and anticipation that comes when the impossible suddenly becomes very, very real. These were children of the stellar colonies, born into a generation that knew space was never truly safe. "Run a comparative analysis," Thompson commanded. "Cross-reference with every known alien encounter in the last 50 years. He didn't need to say more. The team understood the gravity of the moment. The first detailed images began to resolve on the screens. They were unlike anything humanity had encountered before. The approaching vessels didn't follow any conventional design. They seemed to be living constructs, something between technology and organic matter. They shifted and moved, their boundaries blurring and reforming like liquid metal caught in an impossible dance. Sarah Martin's voice broke the growing tension. "The colony reports are coming in, sir. Outer settlements are reporting communication disruptions. Long-range sensor arrays in the Kepler quadrant have gone dark." Her hand touched a communication panel, bringing up a real-time map of human-controlled space. Red markers began to bloom like blood drops, indicating lost contact points. Thompson knew what those red markers meant. Each one represented thousands of lives. Entire communities, research stations, mining outposts, families, children. "Prepare emergency evacuation protocols for the outer colonies," he ordered, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "And wake up the Ghost Protocol team." The Ghost Protocol was more than a contingency plan. It was humanity's last resort defensive measure, a project so classified that only a handful of people even knew it existed. As the command center erupted into controlled chaos, Thompson allowed himself one moment of clarity. Whatever was coming, humanity would not go quietly. They had been preparing for this moment, perhaps without even knowing it, for generations. The invasion had begun, and Earth was about to show the universe exactly what it meant to threaten humanity's future. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountain complex, a secret lay dormant. Not a weapon in the traditional sense, but something far more complex, a revolutionary defense system that blurred the lines between technology, consciousness, and pure human determination. Dr. Emma Rodriguez stood before the containment chamber, her reflection ghosting against the reinforced quantum glass. Inside, what appeared to be a series of interconnected ship modules hung suspended in a zero-gravity field, each piece looking more like a living organism than a mechanical construct. The Guardian fleet was humanity's most audacious scientific achievement, a project so far beyond conventional military technology that it bordered on the mythical. System diagnostic, she spoke softly, her voice triggering a cascade of holographic interfaces. Quantum processors hummed to life, their crystalline structures pulsing with an almost organic rhythm. Each module was more than a piece of machinery. It was a potential savior, engineered to adapt, learn, and protect with a complexity that defied traditional understanding. The project's origin was rooted in humanity's darkest moments. After decades of stellar conflicts and near-extinction events, the world's top scientific minds had been given an impossible challenge: create a defense system that could anticipate, adapt, and protect in ways no previous technology could imagine. Dr. Rodriguez remembered the early days. The project had begun as a desperate whisper among researchers who had lost everything to alien incursions, families obliterated, entire colonies reduced to cosmic dust. Each loss became a driving force, a fuel for an impossible dream of protection. The key breakthrough came from an unexpected source: neural interfacing technology, originally developed to help paralyzed patients, was repurposed into something revolutionary. These ships weren't just machines, they were living systems that could bond with human consciousness at a level never before imagined. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the psychological profiles of potential pilots. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were survivors, young men and women who had experienced profound loss, whose trauma could be transformed into the most powerful defensive mechanism in human history. Michael Chen's file caught her eye. Rescued from the decimated lunar research colony when he was just 12, he had watched alien raiders systematically eliminate his entire community. Most would have been broken. Michael became something else entirely, a perfect fusion of human resilience and technological potential. The ship modules began to shift, their metallic surfaces rippling like liquid mercury. Each piece was a marvel of quantum engineering, capable of instantaneous reconfiguration. They could become defensive shields, offensive weapons, or adaptive communication networks, sometimes all within the span of a microsecond. Primary neural synchronization test, Rodriguez commanded. The room darkened, quantum energy crackling along the walls like contained lightning. One by one, the ship modules began to pulse with a soft, blue-white light. They weren't just responding to commands. They were learning, anticipating, evolving. This was more than a weapon system. It was a living shield, programmed with the collective trauma and hope of human survival. The quantum processors began to render potential invasion scenarios. Each simulation played out with terrifying complexity: alien attack vectors, potential defensive strategies, survival probabilities. Traditional military thinking looked like child's play compared to the adaptive intelligence now coming to life. Rodriguez knew the risks. Bonding human consciousness with these systems was unprecedented. The neural link went beyond simple machine-human interaction. It was a complete fusion of biological intuition and quantum computational power. Pilots wouldn't just control these ships, they would become them. "We're ready," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. The Guardian fleet represented humanity's last, best hope. Not just a defensive measure, but a statement to the universe, a promise that no civilization would ever again threaten human children without facing total, overwhelming resistance. The modules continue to shift and breathe, waiting. Potential, promise, protection. Something was coming, and humanity was finally ready. The synchronization chamber looked nothing like a military facility. Soft blue lighting filtered through quantum reactive glass walls, creating an environment that was part medical facility, part meditation space. Here, the most traumatized survivors of humanity's interstellar conflicts would become its most powerful defenders. Michael Rodriguez sat motionless, his lean frame betraying years of physical and emotional conditioning. At 22, he carried memories that would have broken most people. The Callisto Colony massacre wasn't just a historical event for him. It was a living nightmare etched into every fiber of his being. 12 years ago, he had watched alien raiders systematically eliminate entire schools, classrooms full of children reduced to nothing more than statistical casualties. Dr. Helen Parker moved around the preparation area, her movements precise and calculated. She was the lead neuropsychologist for the Guardian Fleet Project, a woman who had spent decades understanding the human mind's capacity for survival and adaptation. The neural synchronization is more than a connection, she explained to the group of potential pilots. It's a complete fusion of consciousness. You'll become more than human, more than machine. You'll be the living shield of our species. 7 candidates sat in a semicircle. Each wore the invisible scars of interstellar conflicts. There was Rachel Williams, whose entire research station had been destroyed when she was 16. James Martinez, the sole survivor of a colony ship attacked in deep space. Alina Kim, who had lost her entire family to a precision strike on a mining outpost. Their backgrounds were different, but their eyes shared the same intensity. Survival. Determination. A bone-deep desire to ensure no other child would experience the loss they had endured. The synchronization process began with a series of psychological evaluations that made traditional military screening look like an elementary school quiz. Each candidate underwent weeks of intense mental preparation, their trauma carefully mapped and analyzed. Michael's neural scan was unlike anything Dr. Parker had ever seen. His brain had literally rewired itself in response to trauma, creating neural pathways that defied conventional understanding. Where most would have been broken, he had become something else entirely, a living weapon of pure protective instinct. The ship will become an extension of your consciousness, Dr. Parker explained, attaching delicate quantum interface nodes to Michael's temples. Each node was a marvel of biotechnology, capable of translating emotional responses into computational action. Your pain becomes our shield. Your loss becomes our strength. The first synchronization test was always the most unpredictable. As the quantum interfaces activated, the room filled with a soft electric hum. Holographic displays began to dance with Michael's neural patterns, not just brain activity, but something deeper. Emotional landscapes translated into computational potential. Michael's memories flooded the system. The sound of children crying, the sudden silence of a colony being destroyed, the helplessness of watching everything he loved disappear in an instant. But something remarkable happened. Instead of breaking down, these memories became a source of power. Each moment of loss transformed into a computational algorithm of protection. The ship modules in the adjacent chamber began to respond. Metallic surfaces rippled and shifted, adapting to the emotional input. They weren't just receiving commands. They were learning, understanding, becoming something more than a simple weapon system. Neural synchronization at 78%, a technician called out. The number meant nothing. What mattered was the connection happening before their eyes. Michael wasn't controlling the ship. They were becoming one entity, a living, breathing defensive mechanism born from humanity's deepest wounds. Dr. Parker watched in awe. This was more than a technological breakthrough. This was evolution in its purest form. Humanity transforming its greatest vulnerability into its most powerful weapon. As the synchronization completed, Michael opened his eyes. But they weren't entirely his own anymore. Something else looked out from behind them. A fusion of human resilience and quantum potential. A guardian. A promise. The first line of defense was no longer a weapon. It was a living shield, powered by the most powerful force in the universe. The human capacity to protect. The Epsilon colony hung like a fragile jewel against the endless black of space. 50,000 souls called this research outpost home. Scientists, engineers, children building their future among the stars. They had no idea they were about to become the battleground for humanity's most critical test. Michael Rodriguez felt the attack before the sensors could register it. His consciousness, now completely merged with the Guardian fleet ship, experienced the incoming threat as a cold ripple of predatory intent. The Void Striders were approaching, not with the blunt force of traditional warfare, but with a mathematical precision that suggested they viewed human lives as nothing more than computational variables. Incoming wave detected. The ship's neural interface translated Michael's instinctive warning into tactical data. The colony's defense systems were primitive by comparison. Standard electromagnetic shields, conventional laser batteries, predictable defensive patterns that the alien invaders had already calculated and planned to overcome. But the Guardian fleet was something entirely different. As the first wave of Void Strider attack vessels breached the outer defense perimeter, Michael's ship began to move. It wasn't a movement dictated by pre-programmed combat algorithms. This was something more fluid, more alive. The ship's metallic skin rippled and shifted, quantum reactive surfaces adapting in microseconds to incoming weapon signatures. The first alien energy weapon discharge, a pulse of coherent destruction designed to slice through conventional shields. Michael's ship didn't just deflect the attack. It absorbed it, translated its energy, and returned something entirely unexpected. The returned pulse carried with it the emotional imprint of every child lost in previous alien attacks, a psychological weapon that defied the invaders' computational models. Rachel Williams, synchronized with her own Guardian fleet vessel, joined the defensive formation. Her ship moved like a living creature, anticipating attack vectors before the Void Striders could complete their computational trajectories. Where traditional military doctrine would have called for linear defensive strategies, these ships danced. Unpredictable, adaptive, driven by a consciousness that merged human intuition with quantum computational power. They're trying to isolate the colony's primary research complex. Rachel's voice echoed through the neural network. But it wasn't just a verbal communication. It was a complete transfer of tactical understanding, emotional context, shared purpose. The Void Striders had encountered resistance before. They had mathematical models for human defense systems. They had computational projections for planetary invasions. What they had not anticipated was an enemy that could think and feel simultaneously. Michael's ship began to reconfigure. Defensive modules transformed into offensive capabilities with a fluidity that defied traditional engineering. Energy weapons became information conduits. Shields became computational traps that captured and analyzed alien technological signatures. Target locked, the neural interface announced. But it wasn't a cold, mechanical statement. It carried the weight of remembered loss. The pain of destroyed colonies, the promise to protect what remained. The first Guardian fleet ships struck with a precision that was both terrifying and beautiful. They didn't just attack, they communicated. Each weapon discharge carried not just destructive potential, but a message. We are here. We will protect. We will survive. Void Strider vessels began to fall, not through overwhelming firepower, but through something more fundamental. Their computational models could not process an enemy that was part machine, part emotion, part unbreakable human spirit. In the command center back on Earth, Jack Thompson watched the battle unfold. This was more than a defensive engagement. This was humanity's declaration to the universe, a promise written in quantum energy and emotional resilience. The Epsilon colony would survive. More importantly, the children would be protected. As the last Void Strider vessel disintegrated, Michael Rodriguez felt something profound. This was not just a victory. This was evolution. Consciousness was supposed to be predictable, mathematically quantifiable. The Void Striders had spent millennia perfecting their computational models of intelligence, reducing sentience to a series of logical equations and probability matrices. They had never encountered anything like human emotional memory. Deep within the neural network of the Guardian fleet, something unprecedented was happening. The pilots weren't just controlling ships, they were becoming a collective consciousness, the living weapon that defied every known principle of warfare. Dr. Helen Parker watched the data streams with a mixture of scientific fascination and profound understanding. Each neural link was transmitting more than tactical information. They were broadcasting pure, unfiltered emotional experience. Michael Rodriguez's memories became the first wave of assault. The Callisto Colony massacre played out in quantum-encrypted bursts, not as a simple recording, but as a living, breathing emotional experience. The sound of children's last moments, the crushing weight of helplessness, the primal scream of survival. The Void Strider command network began to fracture. Their computational systems were designed to process information, to calculate, to predict. They had no framework for processing raw human emotion. Each memory transmitted by the Guardian Fleet pilots was like a virus, infecting their logical systems with something they could not understand: pure, unquantifiable human resilience. Rachel Williams contributed her own emotional payload. The destruction of her research station became a weapon more potent than any energy discharge. Memories of colleagues, of dreams destroyed, of a future stolen. Each memory, a razor-sharp fragment that cut through alien computational defenses. "We're seeing unprecedented neural disruption," a technician called out, her voice a mixture of excitement and disbelief. The Void Strider communication networks were beginning to destabilize, not through technological attack, but through something far more fundamental. The aliens had studied human conflict for generations. They understood our technological capabilities, our resource management, our potential for violence. What they could not comprehend was our capacity to transform pain into strength. Each Guardian Fleet ship became a living memorial, not just a weapon, but a testament to survival. The neural links created a network more complex than any technological system, a living, breathing consciousness that carried the collective trauma of humanity. In the command center, Jack Thompson watched as something miraculous unfolded. The Guardian Fleet wasn't just defending. They were communicating in a language beyond words, beyond technology. The Void Striders began to experience something unprecedented in their evolutionary history: doubt, uncertainty, emotional resonance that their computational models could not process. Michael's consciousness expanded. He was no longer just a pilot. He was a conduit for every lost child, every destroyed colony, every moment of human resistance. The ship around him became liquid, adaptive, a living extension of collective human trauma and hope. "They're attempting to disengage," another technician reported. But it was more than a tactical retreat. The Void Striders were experiencing something close to psychological breakdown. Dr. Parker understood what was happening. The Guardian Fleet had discovered a weapon more powerful than any technological system: the ability to transform collective trauma into a form of communication that transcended traditional understanding of conflict. Memories cascaded through the neural network, not just Michael's or Rachel's, but a collective experience of survival. The moment a child escaped a burning colony, the instant of hope in the middle of destruction, the unbreakable human spirit that refused to be erased. The Void Strider command network began to collapse, not through physical destruction, but through an assault of pure, unquantifiable human emotion. This was more than a battle. This was a fundamental challenge to everything the alien civilization understood about intelligence, about survival, about the nature of consciousness itself. As the last computational barriers fell, one thing became clear: humanity had discovered a weapon beyond technology, a weapon of memory, of survival, of unbreakable hope. The Global Defense Command Center resembled a living organism more than a traditional military installation. Quantum processors pulsed like neural networks, holographic displays cascading with real-time data from across human-controlled space. Jack Thompson stood at the epicenter, watching as Dr. Emma Rodriguez unveiled the true strategy behind the Guardian Fleet. "This isn't just a defensive system," she explained, her fingers tracing complex geometric patterns across the holographic interface. "It's a living, adaptive network that hunts as much as it protects." The room fell silent. Military strategists, scientists, and political leaders watched as the full scope of the project revealed itself. The Guardian fleet was designed to do more than defend. It was engineered to systematically dismantle the infrastructure of any threat to human civilization. Each ship was more than a weapon. It was a data-gathering organism, capable of analyzing alien technological signatures at a quantum level. Where traditional military doctrine would have called for direct confrontation, the Guardian fleet operated with a precision that bordered on biological intelligence. Michael Rodriguez's neural link had become the key to understanding this new form of warfare. His consciousness, merged with the ship's quantum systems, could predict and counter alien attack vectors before they even materialized. It wasn't just predictive analysis. It was a form of quantum precognition that defied traditional understanding of combat. Watch the computational flow. Dr. Rodriguez pointed to a series of shifting holographic lines. The Guardian fleet ships didn't just communicate with each other. They became a single living intelligence. Each encounter with the Void Striders was collected, analyzed, and immediately distributed across the entire network. Rachel Williams demonstrated the system's capabilities. Her ship had become something between a weapon and a living intelligence. It could identify alien technological signatures, predict their evolutionary potential, and develop countermeasures in microseconds. More critically, it could target the fundamental infrastructure that supported alien invasion capabilities. The strategy was ruthless in its elegance. Instead of destroying individual ships, the Guardian fleet targeted communication networks, resource generation systems, and the computational infrastructure that allowed the Void Striders to coordinate their attacks. "We're not just fighting," Jack Thompson observed. "We're systematically removing their ability to fight." Each Guardian fleet ship carried the collective trauma of human survival. But it also carried something more dangerous: a complete understanding of the psychological and technological vulnerabilities of their enemies. They didn't just attack. They dismantled entire systems of threat with surgical precision. The quantum communication network expanded beyond human understanding. Ships thousands of light-years apart could coordinate with an instantaneous response that made traditional communication look like prehistoric signaling. Each vessel was both an individual unit and part of a larger living intelligence. Dr. Rodriguez revealed the most critical aspect of their strategy. The Guardian fleet wasn't just defending human colonies. It was learning, evolving, creating a defensive network that could anticipate and neutralize threats before they could fully form. "Every encounter makes us stronger," she explained. The holographic display showed how each battle, each interaction with the Void Striders, was immediately integrated into the fleet's collective intelligence. Weaknesses were identified, countered, and transformed into strengths within speed that defied conventional understanding of adaptation. Michael Rodriguez's consciousness flickered across multiple ship interfaces. He was no longer just a pilot. He was a living weapon, a computational entity that carried the collective hope of human survival. Each memory of loss became a strategic advantage. Each moment of pain transformed into a precise method of protection. The Void Striders had made a fundamental mistake. They had treated humanity as a simple, linear threat to be calculated and overcome. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a species capable of transforming its deepest wounds into its most powerful weapon. As the strategic display showed the expanding network of Guardian fleet ships, one thing became clear: this was more than a defensive strategy. This was humanity's declaration to the universe, a promise written in quantum energy and unbreakable resolve. We will protect. We will survive. We will evolve. The Orion Nebula became a crucible of cosmic conflict. Swirling clouds of stellar dust and electromagnetic interference created a battlefield that would have been impossible for conventional military strategies. But the Guardian fleet was anything but conventional. Michael Rodriguez felt the approach of the Void Striders before any sensor could detect them. His consciousness, now fully merged with the ship's quantum systems, experienced their movement as a complex mathematical dance of potential destruction. They were coming with everything they had, a final desperate attempt to break humanity's defensive capabilities. Rachel Williams' voice echoed through the neural network. Not a verbal communication, but a complete transfer of tactical understanding. They're concentrating their entire remaining fleet. This is their last stand. Thousands of Void Strider vessels emerged from quantum-fold spaces, their geometric shapes shifting and reconfiguring in ways that defied traditional understanding of spacecraft design. They moved with a computational precision that had decimated countless civilizations. But humanity was different. Humanity had something they could not comprehend. The first wave of attack came as a quantum cascade, a simultaneous assault designed to overwhelm any defensive system. Conventional shields would have collapsed instantly. The Guardian fleet did something else entirely. Michael's ship, Michael himself, began to transform. The metallic skin rippled and shifted, creating a defensive matrix that was part technological marvel, part living organism. Each incoming energy weapon was not just deflected but analyzed, its computational signature absorbed and understood in microseconds. Tactical integration complete, the neural interface announced. But it was more than a simple status update. It was a declaration of intent. The Guardian fleet didn't just defend. They began to counterattack in a way that challenged everything known about space combat. Ships moved with a fluidity that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They were no longer simply vessels controlled by human pilots. They were living extensions of human consciousness, each movement driven by a combination of quantum computational power and pure, unbreakable human survival instinct. Rachel's ship began to broadcast. Not radio signals, not traditional communication, but a quantum-encrypted emotional payload that carried the collective trauma of every human colony ever destroyed. Each memory became a weapon more potent than any energy discharge. The Void Strider's computational networks began to destabilize. They had mathematical models for every conceivable combat scenario, but they had no framework for processing pure, unquantifiable human emotion. Michael Rodriguez pushed beyond every known limitation. His consciousness expanded, connecting not just with his ship, but with the entire Guardian fleet. They became a single living intelligence, a network that could predict, adapt, and counterattack faster than any computational system could process. Quantum entanglement at maximum, a technician in the Earth Command Center reported. But it was more than a technical achievement. It was a fundamental reimagining of what consciousness could be. The battle became a dance of impossible complexity. Guardian fleet ships moved through the Orion Nebula's electromagnetic interference like living creatures. They anticipated attack vectors before the Void Striders could complete their computational trajectories. They transformed defensive capabilities into offensive weapons in microseconds. Jack Thompson watched from the command center, understanding that this was more than a battle. This was a fundamental challenge to everything known about intelligence, about survival, about the nature of consciousness itself. The Void Strider fleet began to collapse, not through overwhelming firepower, but through something far more fundamental. They were experiencing a form of psychological warfare that their computational models could not process. Each Guardian fleet ship carried the memories of lost colonies, of children who had survived, of a species that refused to be erased. These memories became a weapon more powerful than any technological system. As the last Void Strider vessel disintegrated, Michael Rodriguez understood something profound. This was not just a victory. This was evolution. Humanity had discovered a weapon beyond technology, a weapon of memory, of survival, of unbreakable hope. The universe would never be the same. The aftermath of the conflict rewrote everything known about interstellar civilization. Humanity was no longer just another species struggling to survive. They had become something else entirely. In the diplomatic chambers of the Galactic Concordance, representatives from 100 different civilizations studied the data from the conflict with a mixture of terror and fascination. The Guardian fleet was more than a military achievement. It was a fundamental reimagining of consciousness, of protection, of what it meant to be a sentient species. Dr. Emma Rodriguez stood before the assembled representatives, her presentation a careful deconstruction of humanity's defensive strategy. Behind her, holographic displays showed the intricate neural networks that had become the Guardian fleet's most potent weapon. "We did not just defend," she explained, her voice calm and precise. "We transformed our greatest vulnerability into our most powerful strength." Michael Rodriguez sat in the observation deck, his consciousness still partially merged with the ship's systems. He was no longer just a pilot or a survivor. He had become something between a living weapon and a diplomatic envoy, a bridge between human experience and galactic understanding. The surviving Void Striders watched the proceedings with what could only be described as a form of technological trauma. Their computational models had been completely shattered. They had encountered a form of intelligence that defied every principle of their understanding of consciousness. Rachel Williams presented the psychological analysis. The Guardian fleet's ability to weaponize emotional memory had created a new paradigm of defensive strategy. It wasn't just about technological superiority. It was about the fundamental human capacity to transform pain into protection. Jack Thompson, now serving as Earth's primary diplomatic representative, understood the deeper implications. The conflict had been about more than survival. It had been a declaration of humanity's place in the universe. "We are not asking for permission," Thompson stated to the assembled representatives. "We are establishing a new understanding of what it means to protect." The holographic displays showed the Guardian fleet's true nature. Each ship was a living memorial. Each vessel carried the memories of lost colonies, of children who had survived, of a species that refused to be erased. They were not just defensive systems. They were living testaments to human resilience. Diplomatic records would later show that this was the moment everything changed. The Guardian fleet was not just a military achievement. It was a form of communication that transcended traditional understanding of interstellar diplomacy. Michael Rodriguez felt the collective consciousness of the Guardian fleet pulse around him. They had become something more than a defensive network. They were a living, breathing ecosystem of protection, a quantum-entangled system that could anticipate and neutralize threats before they could fully form. The representatives from other civilizations struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. The Guardian fleet challenged every known principle of military strategy, of consciousness, of the very nature of survival itself. Dr. Rodriguez's final presentation revealed the most profound aspect of their achievement. The Guardian fleet was not just a weapon. It was a form of evolutionary adaptation that transformed collective trauma into a mechanism of protection. "We are not defined by what was done to us," she explained. "We are defined by how we choose to protect others." The surviving Void Striders began to dismantle their own invasion infrastructure. They had encountered something they could not comprehend, a species that could turn its deepest wounds into its most powerful weapon of defense. As the diplomatic proceedings concluded, Michael Rodriguez understood something profound. This was more than a victory. This was a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to be a sentient species in the universe. Years later, children in human colonies would tell stories of the Guardian fleet, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a living promise, a testament to the unbreakable human spirit. We will protect. We will survive. We will evolve. The universe was listening.